I've been playing Kane's for almost 14 years from now, and I want to show you something that is not often discussed within the community, which is none other than hotkeys. Hotkeys are present in almost all real-time strategy games, and since this feature makes the game more convenient and easier to use, and at the same time it can provide a huge advantage to anyone, I thought it would be worth making a complete guide about it. I would like to mention that the hotkeys seen in the video are extremely customizable within the game, and it is not certain that one or other setting will work for others in the same way as for me. There are many options to choose from, and it is worth experimenting with them so that you can play the game as comfortably and efficiently as you can. It is very important to note also that there will be things that most of you are already aware of, but I may also mention functions that many people do not know about, so I will try to cover as much as possible. And by the way, you can't play an FPS game with only a keyboard, right? So let's get on with this. Jumping right into the game, you can find the assignment of our hotkeys in the game's settings. When setting up hotkeys, you can notice that we can change certain assignments both individually and through the hotkey UI. The UI represents exactly the in-game layout of what you can experience during a mission or a match. In addition, various keyboard-only commands can be found here, which cannot be really accessed by other methods within the game. While we are going through these commands, I would like to show you what the basic configurations are and what I personally use in my own games. The very first shortcut we see in the keyboard-only commands group is the Select All Units button. I won't change this much as I'm already used to it myself. What it does is pretty simple, it selects all the combat-based units that you own in the entire map. The second option right below is the Selection of Matching Units shortcut key, which selects all the matching units for us based on the current selection. So, for example, if 3 bikes are selected, it will select all the bikes on the map. And if 2 militia squads and 3 tanks selected, then all the tanks and militia squads that we own. The Control plus 0k combination can be used to show or hide the health of all units and buildings on the screen, which can be very useful if you want to keep an eye on your things. I usually change this hotkey and put it to a separate place because I only use it at the beginning of the matches, so it doesn't bother me later. It should be noted here that the game never remembers this setting, so you will also have to use it after loading the map or a bit later after the game starts. The next key is for stopping the selected units, and I don't really change this from the S key because that is the same in almost all RTS games and it's unnecessary to do so. Next up, we have the Ctrl plus X or Scatter Units key. This is the magic K combination of CNC games for scattering all selected units. It looks at the center of the overall selection and scatters our units by as many as are selected. It is a very important element to lose as little as possible value during a fight. On the other hand, I like to put this function on the single and easily accessible button, and I use the tabulator key for this. The next subtab and previous subtab functions are quite useless with this button, but I will explain this later when we reach the production tabs. The assault move hotkey performs almost the same function as the attack move, with the difference that the units also attacks buildings during their route. It is not worth changing this button, or it is also good if you unbind this hotkey. Ctrl plus R is the key combination for placing rally points. I don't really use this key because in the game it is not necessary to build buildings in the control group since we control all production from the production tabs. Furthermore, we can automatically place these points with the right mouse button if the buildings are selected. However, if it's more convenient, I think this function can be used at a certain level on this basic setting or otherwise. The jump on the next harvester hotkey is a very useful and important button within the game. Although we don't use it very often, only in the middle and the late game, it helps us to keep an eye on the harvester units we still have. This makes it easier to sort them out the map, and there is also less chance of losing them unnecessarily. It can be used with the basic setting or with a modified one, depending on what is better for you. The Place Beacon key is mostly used in team games as it places a smoke signal on the map for your teammates with your own faction color. And it also gives a notification and the sound on the minimap, thereby drawing the attention of your teammates. Since I don't really use this, I moved it to a less frequently available button, saving space on the keyboard. The view home base command is quite easy to use. When you press it, the camera immediately jumps to our construction yard. However, using it can be much trickier than that. The command takes the very first cornyard from the building tab to the center of our camera. So, if we close and open multiple MCVs, the camera position will change accordingly. It is important to note here that if we don't have a construction yard, then the crane, and if we don't have one, that the most expensive tech buildings or production buildings will take their place, depending on which one was built first, if more are present from the same type. I can safely say that you don't really have to change it by default. The shift key here adds more stuff in the Suren selection, and since we are talking about a modifier, it is quite risky to change it. We are also have here hotkeys for the voice chat functions, but since the vape is no longer works in the game, it is completely unnecessary to talk about this function. Feel free to clear these buttons. Also, team chat is binded on the backspace and all chat is binded on the enter key. They are perfectly set up, I think no changes are necessary again. And here is a very important key for us, the space button in our keyboard. The view last event hotkey is again something that has become a trademark of CNC games for quite some time. It is very important, useful and by no means negligible function. So in the game, various micro events are getting recorded in real time, for which the game sends you notifications in a form of a sound through the electronic video agent or as a text at the bottom left corner. It is also very important to note that these records can happen very quickly, one after another, so you have to pay attention to the timing of their use. To view these events, you can use the space key, so the camera jumps right onto them. For using multiple times, you can watch the last 3 events in the reverse chronological order. These are usually indicate the detection of an enemy appearing for the first time on the map, or the discovery of a hostile stealth units, or, last but not least, contain macro warnings. With the bookmarks, you can save screen positions and use them to jump to the saved positions as you wish. Since I don't use this function, I tend to delete their hotkeys to save space. However, again, if you like this type of access to the map, then by default you can use the control combination to assign locations to the hotkeys. The fast forwarding is a function only and exclusively available in replay mode, and I have this hotkey on the dot button by default. You will have something similar on the keyboard, I think. I also don't change the camera reset hotkey and the camera movement arrows either. The former has a perfect place on the numpad 5, it does nothing but return the camera's rotation and height to its original state. But I am deleting the remaining functions in this regard only because I use the middle mouse button for this anyway. The toggle heads up display button is very simple, it removes or brings back the entire interface at the same time. And thanks to the EA, the terrestrator function can no longer be used, they can also be deleted from here. Its original function is to make online matches more colorful by commentators. Also, everyone loves global conquest mode or has tried it at least once. You can pass it on to the AI opponents with the space shortcut. Now we can switch to the support powers shortcut group. Contrary to the popular belief, hotkeys for support abilities are completely useless, and it is difficult to assign. In my personal opinion, it is perhaps one of the features that can be easily done with the mouse. As everywhere else, you can experiment with these options if you can find a better place for them on the keyboard. But it is time to switch to the common command interface. It is completely pointless to me that the assault move isn't located here, but I think the fact that it is not located on the bottom panel during gameplay contributes to that. First things first, we have the control or force attack key. If you are controlling units and press the control key, you can actually force attack to the ground or to a specific unit. Sometimes it is used to deal splash damage with a certain types of units or stack up infantry, which can come really handy several times. But let's just stay at the basics. And here is the big brother of the assault move key, which is the attack move. Our units will attack all enemy units along the way. This prioritizes units over buildings. Also with the G button, we can push any unit into a specific position regardless of the circumstances. This can be demonstrated best with the infantry, because here, when these units came under heavy fire, they will be suppressed to slowing down and getting bonus armor. However, by using this hotkey, they lose this and push forward to a specified point. The disadvantage of this is that they will die more easily. The reverse move command applies to most of the vehicles, and this can be done with the D key. The selected units will pull backwards, and since the front or armor hits take less damage, you may also want to use this hotkey to retreat or maneuver your vehicles. The very important note here is that most of the vehicles usually describe an entire turn, just like in real life. There is no immediate rotation. This is better to keep in your mind. With the help of the alt modifier, we can give roads to our units so they can complete one command after another. This can be combined with unit-specific abilities, which I will mention shortly. I want to take the planning mode as a side note here because you will not use it. Nobody have time for that. One of the hidden shortcuts are the make formation command. If you have collected an army of the suitable size, it may be necessary to organize your troops into the right formation sometimes. This can be called up by pressing the left and right mouse buttons simultaneously. By moving your mouse horizontally, you can set the direction of the selected team, and by moving it vertically, you can set its width and depth. After we watch these basic movement commands, let's take a look at the stances. Stances are actually unit-specific behaviors that you can set for each individual unit. Each stance represents a different combat behavior and fulfills a different function. In the aggressive stance, your units will constantly retaliate at the enemy units and move out of position. In the guard stance, your units fight the enemy only up to a certain point and then return to their original position. In the hold ground stance, the units also open fire on every enemy unit within their range, but do not leave their position at all. In the hold fire stance, the units do not do anything until they are commanded to do so. This is especially good for stat units. These modes can be toggled on units with the Alt modifier and its combination of the A, S, D or F key. Certain units and buildings contain abilities or upgrades that we also want to reach or use quickly. There are 4 different slots available on the command card in the lower right corner, which can be also called up with the control modifier with the same buttons. Personally, I really don't like this setting, so I usually change it to the freed V, B, N and M keys without any modifiers. In our next category, we can see the real strength of our hotkeys, which is the sidebar on the right side. This is where most of the production and the macro tasks are concentrated right under our hands, so it is worth paying the most attention to this. The first thing we will look at now will be the entire production tab, which is divided into 5 large sections. The contextual tab, apart from this, always shows the soaring selection. These 5 tabs are the building production, the defense production, the infantry production, the vehicle production, and the air production tab. You can see the shortcut keys for each tab here on the left. Pressing any one of these will jump to the right tab. If several production buildings are available, pressing the given tab several times will change the production list of the buildings or units. Each production list is accompanied by a grid. Each grid element is replaced by a function key located at the top of our keyboard. 3 in a row from 1 to 12. Whichever tab we switch to, the button that replaces a given position will always be the same, making it easier to memorize on our hands. This allows us to tap down the entire production in seconds. We can multiply a key 5 times more in the combination with the shift key. The only thing that cannot be done with a hotkey here is the interrupting and cancelling a production. We always have to do this with the right mouse button. I also want to mention that the shift key also applies here. The last modifiable commands are hotkeys linked to the radar interface in the top right corner. Here you can find the 3 building modifiers which you can use to sell, deactivate and repair your buildings. This is set so strangely for me because my keyboard is not English assigned. Based on this, obviously your keys may differ from this. The last 2 functions for which you don't really have to use hotkeys again are the online messenger and the player status screen. Next come the hotkeys that cannot be customized in the game, and believe it or not, these are the control groups. Most of you know this feature and use it in many games, but I still want to show you this method for those who are not aware of it yet. So now, we back into the game. I made myself a big pile of unit with which I can show this feature. The point here is that you can place selections on a number and the game will save it for the duration of the match. These saved units are also given a small number in the game, so you can see which number group they belong to. If you want to select the same units again that you pair with a number, you just have to press the given number on the keyboard. It is that simple. Double pressing the given number switches the camera to the center of the group so you can keep an eye on several things on the battlefield at the same time. My only note here is that you will save these groups by combining the control key on the keyboard with the desired number. As a final quick tip, in the general settings you can change the move command to the left mouse button, as the classic setting, or the right mouse button, which is the modern setting. In addition, there is also a tooltip delay slider, which should be kept as low as possible. Now that we're done with this, I've shown you the hotkeys I personally use. I like to point out once again that each button can be customized according to your own taste. The most important thing is to make the game comfortable for yourself and thus able to forge an advantage and also have fun. And that is overall all of the things that you want to know about hotkeys and control groups in Kane's Wrath. Since this is an expansion pack, most of the tips apply to the base game as well. Regardless, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and as always, have a wonderful day.